Resident Evil Requiem is a game that unites the majority of Resident Evil fans worldwide. More and more game content is revealed leading up to the game's release, and everyone is discussing every single detail. A few days ago, Capcom released a video for Road to Requiem, where they not only briefly explained the plot of the previous games and a piece of lore important for the upcoming game, but also revealed some interesting content for Resident Evil Requiem release. They showed off the new Nintendo Switch 2 controller, announced content in collaboration with Fortnite, and even a Resident Evil showcase, which will take place in January 2026. In this video, we'll focus on the deluxe edition of the game and its pre-order bonus, as it raises many questions about the game itself and reveals at least 2 new gameplay mechanics. My name is Scyris Nova, and welcome to my first video on this channel. Alright, so let's talk about the deluxe edition of Resident Evil 9. We've got 2 versions here, the standard edition for around 80 euros or $70, which includes only the game, and the deluxe edition for 90 euros or $80. Now the big question is this price really fair for a pre-sale and a future purchase, or it is quite extraordinary nowadays? First of all, it is said that the game will feature 2 different perspectives, one in first person and another one in third person perspectives, both with different animations and maybe even unique cutscenes. That is not confirmed yet, but if it is true, that already sounds quite interesting. And considering the game is taking us back to dusted Raccoon City, the setting must not be worse than in previous Resident Evil games. The atmosphere should feel completely different from what we had, for example, when playing as Ethan or in the reset Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. So expectations are already high here. That's why this price might be quite fair, as a lot of people can complain about. Now let's move on to our analysis of content from the Deluxe Edition pack, but before we do that, I would like to start first with our pre-bonus, namely outfit for Grace, so-called Apocalypse. And finally, this word has come out from the Capcom's mouth, Apocalypse. Right, Dust Golem? You remember this old tweets from him when he always told us that the game will be called Resident Evil Apocalypse, 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 everything about Apocalypse. Okay, our lovely insider, you got it. Here we go. But did you know that the word Apocalypse itself comes from ancient Greek language and means revelation? And what's more interesting, Koshi Nakanishi, who worked on Resident Evil Revelations and now is working on Resident Evil Requiem, is one of the developers here. So maybe through this game we'll explore and answer some of the unresolved questions from the Revelation storyline, maybe even the pre-story of Elisa Ashcroft, or perhaps the revelation about Raccoon City's true secret. That's the question that remains on the air, but I hope we'll find some answers on it. So going back to our deluxe content, we can see that we get 5 costumes of Grace in total, including the Dimitrescu one. Here is the question then, is this Apocalypse costume one of the 5 costumes included in the deluxe edition, or is it an additional one? If it is additional, then in total we're talking about 6 costumes. If not, then the 3 costumes left still remaining unknown. I would assume that there is gonna be some FBI themed costume, no doubt about that, but let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Another question, why weren't we shown the rest of the costumes yet? If I remember correctly, Capcom usually shows off the different costumes already during the deluxe edition announcement or something like that, so is it possible that revealing the other costumes could accidentally leak unannounced characters from the game, like Leon Kennedy or someone else? That could explain the secrecy. You can also write your thought about it in the comments below. Going back to the pre-order bonus, we can see 2 notes under the name of the costume, and one of them says, "This costume will change Grace's appearance only." Okay, wonderful note, thank you, but why is that specifically mentioned here? Does that mean some other costumes might affect more than just her appearance? Could they actually maybe give some additional buffs or abilities to the character? Actually, an interesting thought, right? For example, there is no such note under the Dimitrescu costume, but there is under Apocalypse. So these clarifications seem intentional, maybe to tell us that not every skin is purely cosmetic or something like that. And another question, if we're able to change skins in the game, does that mean we'll be able to unlock them directly during gameplay instead of just through the Deluxe Edition? Also an interesting one, right? Now, let's talk about the weapon skins. There are 4 of them, including Apocalypse, which seems to follow a uniform, military-like theme. The same goes for Grace's outfit, actually, and this could tie into the destroyed and dusty Raccoon City setting to my mind, possibly involving the city's military quarantine. You remember these newspapers about Elpis and the military operation and so on, and the quarantine in Raccoon City after the rocket launch even. So thematically, this whole military style actually makes sense. But the question here is, are those next 3 weapon skins that were not shown to us yet different skins for different weapons, or are these 4 skins just for one specific weapon like the M232 pistol? You know, since Apocalypse skin for Grace already showed us an SMP gun that Grace is holding in her hands, maybe we'll also have a shotgun skin. And for example, I don't know, the 4th weapon, a crossbow and a crossbow skin. We'll see that only by release. And actually, if we dive deep into the question of weapon skins, I have the most logic question ever. Why do we need these skins at all? Do they have any deeper meaning in the gameplay? If someone plays in first-person perspective, sure, it makes sense. You see the skin, I mean, you can change them, it's even not a problem. But for the third-person perspective, the player will most likely be focused on the story, exploring, finding files and uncovering the lore, but definitely not watching every day this military skin of M232 pistol. So instead of getting additional weapons, we're getting weapon skins? Who are we supposed to show them to? Honestly, that feels like a really strange design choice, and to me it could be seen as one of the disadvantages of this deluxe edition. Precisely. While these questions are still on the air, let's take a look on the next 3 additional contents here, and we'll start first of all with Audio Pack Raccoon City Classic. I have nothing to add because we don't know what music it will be, but I still have a lot of questions. For example, what exactly does Classic mean here? Is it the music from Resident Evil 2 and 3 originals? Or maybe remakes? Or could it even go further back to Resident Evil 0 and Code Veronica? Either way, it is a great addition to my mind, because this kind of soundtrack really helps us dive deep into the Raccoon City atmosphere before and after the explosion and the rocket launch, of course. The next one are files, namely letters from 1998. It is actually the interesting one because we don't know the content of these letters yet, but we are paying around $10 more for a small piece of additional lore. I don't mind, I would even love to read them, but if these letters don't actually include any new or important information about the Raccoon City, Elpis or something else, that would be a pity. And probably even disappointing for many players, including myself. Even worse, just think about this one. If these letters just repeat what we've already seen in files from Resident Evil 2 Remake or Resident Evil 3 Remake, then it would be the second major disadvantage actually, especially since we still haven't seen any real gameplay footage at all and don't know the consequence of all actions and scenes that are going in the game. Be careful, Capcom. We take it into consideration. A big consideration. The last but not least are charms. We get possibly 2 of them. One is the Mr. Raccoon charm, you can see him on a picture, and the second one is maybe some another charm, I don't know. Questions coming out momentarily. Do these charms give any passive bonuses, kind of like badges, you know, attached to our backpack or maybe the weapon? Because if you remember, this Mr. Raccoon weapon charm from Resident Evil 8, It was first weapon's visual effect. It gave no benefit to the weapon itself, so just like the decorations. Here, in this case, does these charms have a real function, or is it really like an accessoire? Also, I could think that these two charms might be for two different protagonists, one for Grace and one maybe for Leon or another character, which actually sounds quite reasonable. Still, that's just my speculation until we know more in January 2026, or maybe in December during the Game Awards. That's why at the very beginning of this video I mentioned two new gameplay mechanics that could possibly be known for us after analyzing the deluxe edition of Resident Evil Requiem. First of all, it is our costume changing and even unlocking the new ones while completing the game, and charms, both of which could have a deeper meaning than we actually think. So take us into your mind, and together on the release of this game we will look it up if it's true or not. I could also say something about the filter effect, but it's basically an icy bluish color filter that covers the whole screen, and that's it. Honestly, it doesn't sound that impressive to my mind, and if you remember the previous filter from the Resident Evil 4 remake, I don't think quite a lot of people were impressed from it, but we'll see how it goes by Resident Evil Requiem. Maybe it will make a big difference. I don't know, we'll see only on release. Still, I don't think that it will be something extraordinary in this case. And that's it for my first video on this channel. And to sum it up, the Deluxe Edition has a few interesting points actually. New skins, music, files, and even charms, but the value really depends on what those features actually do in the game. If they're just cosmetic, it's hard to justify the price difference really. But if they affect gameplay or expand the lore, hopefully, then it might actually be worth it. Either way, there are still a lot of open questions on the air about costumes, characters, and the meaning behind this apocalypse theme, etc. And until we see real gameplay, we can only speculate what additional features will come to Resident Evil Requiem. By the way guys, did you see this new leaked screenshot from Portuguese PS Store about Leon Kennedy costume coming out to Resident Evil Requiem? Wonderful, right? But it's just a fake. And the simple answer to it, why it is fake, will be given in my next video.